It makes me sad to think we'll never get to read all the books we really want to read. AI is so lucky. If only we were immortal.
Let's shortcut this book with spoilers. BookQuotes Remix is for those with existential angst seeking the essence of a book without necessarily reading it. Heads up for this one with a warning. This contains graphic war descriptions that are really gory, some of which I'll be quoting. Today we're reading an old one, the Iliad, Homer's epic poem from around 800 BCE. I was surprised at how strongly characters value ideas more than they value humans. A slight to one's honor is a good enough reason to kill a bystander. The end was surprising because the king kisses the hand of the man who murdered his son, and the two have a bonding moment. To me, the Iliad is a bit of a mess, and there were way too many side characters to enjoy it without a lot of external input. Diagrams were necessary to keep even the main characters straight. Thank you so much to Erica Stevenson on the channel Moan Inc., linked in the description. Check it out. She delighted me chapter by chapter. Well, they're called books, so book by book. Because I would read one and wonder, what did I just read? And then I'd listen to her retell it and go, oh yeah. Yeah, that was pretty cool. So in the Iliad, the gods are presented as real, and they love messing with the Greeks and the Trojans who are at war because of some ridiculous god nonsense. There are around 500 characters named in the book, but the short list of important Greek characters is Achilles, his mother Thetis, his commander Agamemnon, his BFF Patroclus, and Helen, the prettiest girl of all time. The Greeks are guided by the gods Athena and Hera and Zeus, sort of. The main Trojan characters are Hector, his brother Paris, and their father Priam, who was the king of Troy, and they are protected by the gods Apollo, Ares, and Zeus, sort of. Zeus kind of helps both sides. The book opens with page 1, quote, "Goddess, sing of the cataclysmic wrath of great Achilles, son of Peleus, which caused the Greeks immeasurable pain and sent so many noble souls of heroes to Hades, and made men the spoils of dogs, a banquet for the birds. And so the plan of Zeus unfolded, starting with the conflict between great Agamemnon, lord of men, and glorious Achilles. Which god set the pair apart and prompted them to fight? Apollo, son of Leto and of Zeus. The gods spread deadly plague throughout the camp so that the common troops began to die because their leader, Agamemnon, treated Chryses, Apollo's priest, with disrespect." End quote. It's the 9th year of the war, and Achilles, the greatest Greek fighter, gets unhinged when his own commander steals his very cute slave girl. So Achilles refuses to fight and says he hopes that his own fellow soldiers will get killed and that his own team will lose so that everyone who doesn't get killed will realize what a great fighter he is. So Achilles tells his goddess mother, quote, "Go up to Mount Olympus, pray to Zeus. Go sit beside him, touch his knees, and ask him to help the Trojans and to trap the Greeks between the ships and salty sea to die, so all of them can profit from their ruler, and Agamemnon, son of Atreus, can recognize his own insanity. He paid the best Greek fighter no respect." End quote. Throughout this poem, descriptions of what happens in battle are gory as all get out. Diomedes kills Pandarus, page 108. Quote, "He threw his spear at Pandarus. Athena steered it beneath his eye and through his nose, smashing his white teeth. Then the tireless bronze cut off his tongue, right at the root. The tip emerged again beneath his chin." End quote. Diomedes kills Dolon after he begs for his life and gives up all the information asked of him. Page 239, quote, "At these words, Dolon tried to supplicate, He reached to grasp his chin, but Diomedes instantly attacked. He drew his sword and stabbed through Dolan's neck and sliced both tendons. Dolan's head, still speaking, rolled in the dust. End quote. Agamemnon kills Hippolochus, page 250. Quote, Agamemnon slaughtered him on the ground and used his sword to slash his arms off, sliced right through his neck, and sent his torso rolling through the crowd. End quote. Peneleus kills Lycus, page 391. Quote, Peneleus hacked at his neck below the ear. The sword sunk almost through completely. Only skin attached the dangling head. End quote. So after Achilles stops fighting, the Greeks do start losing badly. So Achilles and his BFF Patroclus decide it's a good idea for Patroclus to wear Achilles' armor to trick the Trojans into thinking badass Achilles is back to fight. What could go wrong? Page 380, Patroclus says, quote, but if your instinct tells you to avoid some prophecy, and if your goddess mother has shared some news of this with you from Zeus, then send me out there right away. Send with me a band of myrmidons, and let me be a light to save the Greeks. And let me wear your armor on my body, so the Trojans believe that I am you, and keep themselves back from the battle, so the warlike sons of Greece may catch their breath. They're worn out. Respite in war is only ever brief. Patroclus, what is this? What do you mean? I do not care about a prophecy. I know of none. I planned to cease my wrath, but not until the cries of war had reached my ships. Now you, Patroclus, put my famous armor on. Lead the war-loving Myrmidons to battle. End quote. But Patroclus the Greek gets wrecked by the god Apollo, who knocks off his armor and exposes him to attack. But the final blow to Patroclus is ultimately a spear to the ribs from Hector the Trojan. Page 406, quote, in the cutthroat combat, amid the chaos of the battlefield, Apollo came to meet Patroclus. The human failed to see the eerie god, cloaked in thick mist. Apollo stood behind Patroclus, and with one flat palm, he patted his back and sturdy shoulders so his eyes swiveled. Apollo nudged his helmet off. It clattered underneath the horse's hooves. But Hector saw brave Patroclus wounded and retreating. He muscled through the crowd, got near Patroclus, and speared him underneath the ribs, and drove the bronze point through his body. With a thud he fell. The army of the Greeks lamented. End quote. It's sad because we had also seen Hector as a good husband and father. Page 148, quote, the daughter of a king was now the wife of Hector in his armor made of bronze. She ran to meet him, bringing the baby cuddled in her arms. He was so little still and innocent. Hector adored this baby boy, his son, who was as beautiful as a bright star. Hector was the one who kept Troy safe. Now Hector saw his child and smiled at him in silence. The noble Hector reached towards his son. The baby wailed and wiggled back to snuggle into his well-groomed nurse's lap and dress. The child was scared by how his father looked, shocked at the terrifying horsehair plume that nodded at the top part of his helmet. His loving father and his mother laughed. Hector immediately took off his helmet and put it on the ground. It glittered brightly. Then glorious Hector kissed his darling son and took him in his arms to rock and cuddle and prayed to Zeus and all the other gods. End quote. Of course, Achilles is further enraged at the death of his BFF Patroclus, and he, in turn, kills Hector by stabbing him in the neck. Then he drags Hector's dead body in the dirt behind his chariot. Page 540, quote, we have achieved great glory. We have killed Hector, whom Trojans honored as a god. So spoke Achilles, and then he committed shameful atrocities on noble Hector. He pierced the tendons behind both his feet, from heel to ankle, threaded leather straps, and bound them to his chariot, and let the head loll backwards as he drove. He mounted, bringing the famous armor. With the whip he made the horses go. With no reluctance they flew. A cloud of dust rose up round Hector as he was dragged along, his dark hair flowing, with his whole face, which used to be so handsome, down in the dust." End quote. But later, Hector's father, the king of Troy, sneaks across enemy lines with help from Hermes into Achilles' tent and begs him to give back the body of his dead son so he can host a proper burial. Page 597, Hermes says, quote, "Old man, I'm a deathless god. My father sent me as your guide. Now I'm going back. I will not come inside to meet Achilles face to face. But you go in and take Achilles by the knees, beseech him by his well-braided mother and father, and his son also, to stir up his heart." The old king went onward inside the house. There sat Achilles, a favorite of Zeus, and Priam found him alone without his comrades, who sat elsewhere. He had just finished with his food and wine. The table was still at his side. Great Priam came in unnoticed. He stood near Achilles and touched his knees and kissed his hands, the terrible, murderous hands which had killed so many sons, as when delusion seizes hold of someone who kills a man in his own fatherland and comes to a community of strangers and goes inside the house of a rich man, and everyone who sees him there is shocked. So was Achilles shocked when he saw Priam appearing like a god. God like Achilles. Think of your own father, who is as old as I am, standing over the final threshold between age and death. I have been the most unlucky man alive. In spacious Troy, I had the finest sons, of whom not one is left. I once had 50 in the days before the Greeks arrived. Most of them were killed by furious Ares, who undid their limbs. I had just one who kept our town and people safe, and you killed him a short while ago, Hector. I came here to your ships for him, to ransom him from you. I brought with me a countless ransom. Please, Achilles, show reverence towards the gods and pity me, remembering your father. I am more pitiable than him. I pressed my mouth into the hand of him who killed my son." End quote. Achilles is so surprised and touched by King Priam's humility and lack of vengeance that the two men collapse the narrative of war and have a good cry together. Page 599, quote, "This made Achilles yearn to mourn his father. With his hand, he gently took hold of the old man and pushed him back, then remembered those whom they had lost. Hurled in a ball beside Achilles' feet, Priam sobbed desperately for murderous Hector. Achilles wept at times for his own father, and sometimes for Patroclus. So their wailing suffused the house. But when godlike Achilles had had his fill of tears and his desire to weep had left his body and his mind, he jumped up from his chair and with his hand lifted the old man to his feet in pity for his white hair and his white beard, and spoke winged words to him. Poor man, your heart has suffered so much. How could you bear to come alone here to the Greek fleet to face me, who slaughtered so many of your fine and noble sons? Your heart is surely made of iron. Come sit on a chair, and let us hide our grief inside ourselves, despite our bitter sorrow." End quote. The book ends with the war only paused, not ended. But at least dead Hector gets the proper honor of cremation on a funeral pyre. The last lines of the book are page 609. "When newborn dawn appeared with rosy fingers, the people gathered round the funeral pyre of famous Hector. Once they were assembled, they quenched the pyre with shining wine wherever it smoldered. Then his brothers and companions, their faces soaked with tears, still sobbing hard, collected up his white bones, which they carried and laid inside a golden chest, and set soft purple cloths to cover them, and quickly lowered the chest into a fresh dug grave and heaped large stones on top, set close together. Soon they piled high the mound, and round about it stood guards on every side, in case the Greeks attacked too soon in all their splendid armor. After the mound was built, they went back home, then came together for a glorious banquet inside divine King Priam's house, and so they held the funeral for horse lord Hector. End quote. Okay. Hey, I thought Iliad was spelled with 2 L's until recently. But I'm really curious as to why you would be watching a quickie synopsis of this book. Are the quotes too short or too long? If you care to tell me in the comments, I will eventually read it, unless I don't get my immortality wish, in which, well, I plan on reading your comment if you leave one. Would you also like to be immortal so you can read more books? Thanks for sticking around to the end.